And think about way back when the continent was being formed. And I want you to think about the glaciers melting, and I want you to think about the landscape changing, and North America was left with incredible beauty. And there were incredible lakes and rivers, but there was one river above all else, the Mississippi River. And on the scope of that river, there were amazing amenities, but there was only one natural waterfall. And it was in a location where the big woods met the prairie. So you would have started on the East Coast and walked in near darkness through beautiful forests, but you could barely see in front of your eyes until you came to that one waterfall. And as the woods met the prairie, you would see the waterfall, you would look out and finally begin to see into the distance. And that's where we are literally physically today. And that waterfall was a place that was stewarded by people for thousands of years in this ancestral home of the Dakota people. And that waterfall also became the power that made it possible, as the northern part of this state was being deforested, to bring the logs down the river and turn this into first a sawmill town. And then as the prairies were dug up for farming, it became the power that turned this into an economic powerhouse. And General Mills and Pillsbury's and others made this the milling capital of the world. And in that, the waterfall that was the center of all of that collapsed. The natural amenity that is the reason that we were here was destroyed because we are here. And so today, we look at this space and this incredible location as a place of great beauty and a place that also tells us the consequences of our action. And we do that at a moment when that has never been more urgent. If any of you think that we are totally protected because we're not near an ocean and hurricanes and all of that, ask the people of Asheville whether they felt safe. None of us are safe unless all of us do our part to address the climate. None of us. And even more important, we are not starting from zero. This room is filled with people who are doing incredible work. Some of you have dedicated a lifetime to this work. One person I'll especially name is one of the great heroes of my wife and me, Will Steger. Will, where are you today? Who has dedicated so much of his work to this. Not everybody is going to be a Will Steger, but some people are a Catherine Ringham, our next door neighbor, who in retirement said, I'm one person, what can I do? Kathy, stand up, would you? So next door, Megan and I are talking all the time about what do we do in the environment. Kathy dug in retirement. She helped really mobilize climate elders. She's one person. What can she do? She can do a lot, and everyone in this room can too. And that's why it's important this is being an event that is hosted by the Minneapolis Foundation, because the Minneapolis Foundation's philosophy is 1 + 1 is 3. No one of us can solve any of the issues facing us, and that's why we call ourselves a community of generosity. It means that we bring people together with big ideas, but we don't stand in the front. We empower others. We want to be the best supporting actor in everybody else's movie. And that's what we want to do today, because we don't stand here as the experts on the environment in the areas of environmental justice, in the areas of water. We stand here as a group that believes that we can help set the table to convene all of us to do this great work. Now, the Minneapolis Foundation's one of the oldest community foundations in the country, and we do two things. Number one, that while there are some people who are your advisor to make the money, we're your advisors to give the money away. Individuals have funds with us, we work with them, and they give out more than $100 million a year across the globe, most of it in this area. The other thing we do is we have dollars that we control as well, and we give those away in 3 key areas, all of it revolving around equity and justice. We can do equity and justice in education, in economic mobility, and the environment. So in our education work, That includes the $1.3 million we just helped raise to give to the Minneapolis Foundation. I'm sorry, to give to Minneapolis Public Schools. We'd love to give it to ourselves. To give to Minneapolis Public Schools to work on their literacy initiatives and also on their initiatives to bring more diverse teachers into the pipeline. Patrice Relaford, who leads that work, is walking into the room right now. In our economic mobility work, which is led by Joanne Stately, who is right over here, that includes the work we did, the $50 million we deployed to West Broadway, Lake Street, and other areas to help rebuild after the destruction after George Floyd's murder. It also means our involvement in the Groundbreak initiative that's brought together most foundations and lending institutions in this town to mobilize capital to help empower entrepreneurs and homeowners of color. Our environmental work is the newest body of that work, and it comes because of two phenomenal gifts. The first of those gifts was from the federal government, and it is a grant of $50 million that we are part of in a coalition with REAMP and the Midwest Environmental Justice Network and the NDN Collective, and together we're going to be granting that money out across the 6 Great Lakes states. You're going to be hearing much more about that in a minute. The second body of work we're doing is in water, and in a few minutes, a gentleman named Ray Harris will enter the room. Ray Harris I know because I used to write about development and knew he was one of the early people to focus on housing downtown, to focus on neighborhood commercial development. And about a year and a half ago, his daughter, Sarah Harris, who's sitting over here somewhere, Sarah Harris called me and she said, my father is in hospice. We'll lose him soon. I'd like you to come over. He wants to make a grant to the community. And I went over and Ray told me about his vision for doing more to focus on the issue of water. Minneapolis, Minnesota, water is in our name. Water should be central to every point that we do, Ray said. I want to do a grant to this community and give it through the Minneapolis Foundation to empower work like today, where we work on water. A group of people down here in front are part of his friends, the water keepers, who are part of this initiative. But that money allowed us to bring together people first who were deeply involved in this work a few months ago, and now we are continuing that work today. It was such a wonderful gift for Ray to give that in his last days as he was in hospice. And I'm only saying this because the family says this. It's kind of funny because that was a year and a half ago and Ray is doing just fine today. In fact, in a few minutes, one of the reasons Sarah's out of the room is Ray is going to be coming into the room in his wheelchair and all of that. But if anyone ever wanted to believe is water life, Ray is a living example of that. So we're here today to look at all of that work. If you want to know more about the Minneapolis Foundation, please raise your hands. We've got team members all throughout the room. Raise your hands here and visit with them. But the final word before I turn this over is, what is a Minnesota meeting? Does anyone ever heard this title, Minnesota meeting, before? Because if so, you're probably my age. The Minnesota meeting was a convening that was done in this community for many years, a couple times a year. Big issues were put on the civic agenda. When I was mayor and we worked on youth violence prevention, we did it through a Minnesota meeting, and they were a must-go-to place where good things were on the stage, but better things were done by meeting people there, and it's how this community got things done. The Minneapolis Foundation, near the end of that life, owned that effort, but then put it out of business because it was a lot of talking and not enough action. What they really wanted was for us to have outcomes that are not just getting together, but having tangible, specific things that are delivered. So we made sure that as now we began to bring the Minnesota meeting brand back out in the community, we will have outcomes. Today, for instance, you will hear about our EPA grants, which will be how we are going to get $40 million out to emerging groups across the Great Lakes. In our water work, you'll be hearing about how we're passing on that body of work to Conservation Minnesota. You'll hear about the task force the Attorney General is going to put together, and you'll hear many other outcomes as well. And so we want you to not only be part of this Minnesota meeting, but also to be part of ongoing ones. If you think you're hearing a washed-up politician delaying time. I'm only doing that because I'd like you to now welcome to the room, entering Ray Harris. Ray, you walked in just in time.